But now, let's get news a little bit away from the palace. There is some other news in town, isn't there? And the calls now for a windfall tax on energy giants are growing after BP reported yet more bumper profits. While we all face ever-increasing energy bills, BP made £4 billion in the first 3 months of this year. Shadow Energy Secretary Ed Miliband described the startling figure as unearned, unexpected windfall of war. Now, look, initially, I think along with quite a few other people, was against a windfall tax. It did seem like a bit of a draconian measure that might turn companies off, and these companies maybe do quite a lot. And actually, we're dealing in large figures here, aren't we? So maybe they do generate rather a lot of money for us, and we wouldn't want to turn that away, would we? However, is this now a little bit too much? Has the Rubicon been crossed? Is it becoming indefensible that these companies, who are absolutely massively profiting now, do need to pay us a little bit more? Robert Palmer joins me, who's the Executive Director of Tax Justice UK. Look, Robert, where are you on this? Do you think that they should be paying a bit more tax? I can imagine your answer, but say it anyway.
Well, companies like BP are absolutely printing cash at the moment, and this isn't due to any particular skill of theirs, it's because of the war in Ukraine. At the same time, as you said, we've got businesses, companies, households, people around the country who are really struggling to pay their fuel bills and their energy bills. So I think beefing up our existing windfall tax makes economic sense and political sense. And what is BP doing with all these profits? It's handing it back to its shareholders, who are mostly overseas investors.
Yeah, and I just wonder, what would you make to the argument then that these companies actually do a huge amount in terms of what they already pay? They employ a lot of people. There'll be taxes involved with all of that. And, you know, it's just business, isn't it, at the end of the day? If events in the world kick off and it means that they happen to be earning more money because their profit margins are down potentially, or they're not in this case, clearly, then that's just so be it.
I mean, this country has got a long history of imposing windfall taxes, particularly around times of war or kind of like really, really big, unusual profits. So Margaret Thatcher's government brought in windfall taxes. We had windfall taxes after both the First and the Second World War. I think politically and economically, companies, businesses, individuals, households are crying out for support, and BP is absolutely raking it in. And as I said, that money is being funneled into shareholders and shareholder profits, and it's not really being put into more investment. So I think there's a pretty clear case that the government should be tightening up and closing the loopholes in the existing windfall tax, asking BP and other big oil companies to pay more money and funneling that into public services and supporting people and businesses around the country.
Yeah, I just wonder whether or not they've had their fun now, and I think this is kind of where I'm at, which is certainly not the most scientific argument that you could possibly come up with, but I got that maybe in the early days of the Ukraine war and a variety of other issues that were plaguing us, maybe you could say, OK, all right, well, this is just the way of the world and they need to make their money. But actually now, we are so far along from this, there's no sign of this coming down whatsoever. The shareholders are seeing, their profits increase exponentially, and ordinary people have been suffering for far too long. I mean, is there a sense that, look, this has just gone on long enough?
I mean, I totally agree. And other countries that have oil industries ask their oil and gas companies to contribute more money in tax. Ultimately, BP is pumping oil and gas that's British oil and gas. To some extent, this is stuff that belongs to all of us. And we should be making sure that we're getting a share of these profits rather than the money ending up in shareholders' pockets and not being invested in sort of, extra support that we can have around.
It's all very well and good. I mean, look, it's all very well and good saying, just lobbing phrases out there like windfall tax, OK? It's all very well and good just saying, well, these people need to pay more. Do you actually have any idea what kind of level the windfall tax would be, what kind of money it would generate, and what that can pay for?
Yeah, so at the moment, there's this 11 billion loophole in the current windfall tax, which means that companies like BP pay almost no windfall tax if they're investing in more oil and gas. So, there are these big loopholes in the existing windfall tax. And countries like Norway have a higher windfall tax. And over the decades, Norway has built up a huge pot of money that it's got to pay out to pensioners in their old age. We in the UK didn't take that approach. and we're in a different situation. So I think there's lots of different options the government could do. I think there's going to be increasing political pressure for the government to ask companies like BP, which are printing cash at the moment, to stump up some more money.